There is one name that is synonymous with the potential death of Arkansas football. When a Razorback fan hears the name Chad Morris, they immediately want to scream and cry or just forget that even happened. A few years ago, Arkansas was the laughingstock of college football, and especially the SEC. Chad Morris was in over his head, and some believe it was the worst Power 5 coaching hire of all time. The Razorbacks were absolutely terrible. They were embarrassing pretty much every single weekend, and Arkansas football was headed towards being a dead program. They would need a massive culture change, someone who was passionate about the Hogs, and someone who had what it takes to build a program in the SEC. Well, they have done that. In today's video, I want to talk about the rise of Arkansas football. I want to go through the timeline of what went wrong for them in the last few years, how they have built this thing up, and if they are here to stay. But before we get into today's video, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we can do so much better than that, so be sure to hit that button, smash that like button for the algorithm, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a college football video. Now let's get started and talk about the rise of Arkansas football. In order to understand how Arkansas football has become America's team, we need to go back to 2011. At one point during the year, the Razorbacks were ranked number 5 in the country, and they were under head coach Bobby Petrino. As we all know, things would go terrible with him, and things would go south. From there, they hired Wisconsin head coach Bret Bielema. Bielema was going to bring a smash-mouth style of football to the SEC, and many thought it would translate. In what was, in my opinion, the best SEC Western Division ever, the Razorbacks went 7-6 in 2014, had a couple big wins, and were really starting to become a great team. They had a lot of hype with Brandon Allen, Alex Collins, and Hunter Henry, plus a defense that was loaded with some talent. Unfortunately, they lost to Toledo early on in the year, and 2015 did not go as planned. They still went 8-5, but Bielema could never take that next step, as in 2016 they went 7-6, and eventually he was fired after going 4-8. Alright, so who were the Razorbacks going to hire next? Bielema was alright. He had them as a bowl team, and they were at least somewhat respectable. The next guy, though, needed to take it to the next level and get Arkansas football back fighting for the SEC Western Division. They picked the wrong guy. His name was Chad Morris. He was 49 years old, a Texas high school football legend, and he was an offensive coordinator with Dabo Swinney at Clemson, and he kind of helped the Tigers program blossom into what they are today. Eventually, Morris left the Clemson Tigers to take the head coaching job at SMU. The Mustangs had fallen on hard times, and he took over a team that went 1-11. In 2015, he'd win 2 games with the Mustangs, then improved to 5-7 in 2016, and then he went 7-5 in 2017. He had built a dead program into something that was respectable, and with his track record, Arkansas saw him as the guy who could bring them back to the top. So, on December 5th, they named Chad Morris the next head football coach of the Razorbacks. Game 1 in 2018 wouldn't go so bad for the Razorbacks as they won 55-20 over Eastern Illinois, but then the losses started to pile up. They lost 6 straight games. They got blown out in pretty much every matchup, and even lost at home to North Texas and lost to Colorado State. Besides a win over Tulsa, they lost their last 4 games, including getting beat by 2 touchdowns by Vanderbilt and getting shut out 38-0 against Missouri. It was a tough first year for Chad Morris, and maybe he wasn't built for the SEC, but he was a great recruiter and was starting to put talent into the Arkansas program. They had a complete mess at the quarterback spot as they really couldn't find anyone. They barely edged out Portland State in Week 1 in 2019, and then they looked somewhat competitive against Ole Miss. They did beat Colorado State, but then once again, the losses started to pile up. They lost at home to San Jose State, they lost to Texas A&M, got killed by Auburn, killed by Alabama, killed by Mississippi State, killed by Western Kentucky, and killed by LSU. This was a terrible season, and Arkansas had made little to no improvement. After the Western Kentucky loss, the leadership at Arkansas decided it was time for a change. They fired Chad Morris 10 games into the 2019 season, and Barry Lunney Jr. was named the interim head coach. Arkansas football was absolutely terrible. They hadn't won an SEC game in 2 years, and they were honestly on the path to the college football graveyard as a dead program. Chad Morris went 4-18 in his 2 years at Arkansas, and they would have to nail the next hire if they wanted any chance of saving the program. The Razorbacks needed to hire the right guy to fix the program, and at first there were 2 candidates that really came to mind. One was the head coach at Appalachian State. His name was Elijah Drinkwitz, and he was one of the youngest coaches in the country, had helped the Mountaineers beat 2 Power 5 teams, and was seen as a bright offensive mind. He was also from the state of Arkansas. Well, the Razorbacks didn't get him, and he went to Missouri. As a Mizzou fan, I love that hire, but Arkansas made an even better hire. At first, when I saw the notification, I actually exited out of my phone and re-looked at it. I could not believe it what I just saw. Georgia had hired an offensive line coach to be the new head man. I think everyone in the college football world shook their head and had no clue what they had just seen. I mean, the guy had never been a head coach or even an offensive coordinator at a Power 5 level, yet now he was the head coach of an SEC program. Well, he had actually been on the staff with Brett Bielema, had ties to Arkansas, and that's where he wanted to be. He was known as a great motivator, a great recruiter, and someone who many thought could turn the program around. But just how quickly could he do it? Well, let's see. First, he needed to change the culture there. He has done that so far, and one of the first big moves he made was bringing in an experienced quarterback. Quarterback play had been an issue since the Allen brothers had left, so he went and nabbed former Florida transfer Felipe Franks to be his guy. He had nearly 3 years of starting experience with the Gators, and while he may not have been a Heisman-level quarterback, he was someone who would do great as a one-year rental and help the team be somewhat decent. They also brought back all-SEC running back in Rakeem Boyd and had a superstar in the making at wide receiver in Treylon Burks. The defense did need some help, but overall, 2020 Arkansas football went pretty well. In their first game, they actually put up a good fight against Georgia, and it showed the Razorbacks were no longer a pushover school. After that Georgia game, they beat number 16 Mississippi State on the road the following week, and this ended a long SEC losing streak and was the first big win of the Pittman era. The following week on the road against number 13 Auburn, the Razorbacks got a game stolen from them as Bo Nix messed up a spike and it should have been a fumble, but they gave Arkansas the ball where they would kick a game-winning field goal. Honestly, Arkansas got robbed. Well, the following week they made up for it as they beat Ole Miss and then put up a fight against number 8 Texas A&M. They then beat Tennessee before they had a pretty rough stretch to end the year. They lost on the road to Florida, lost by 3 points to LSU, and lost a heartbreaker to Missouri. The SEC sort of made a fake rivalry between Missouri and Arkansas, as they call it the Battle Line rivalry, and with both these schools hiring new coaches and the drama that went on in the coaching search, this was the first game between Pittman and Elijah Drinkwitz. While some Mizzou fans may turn on me, I'm enjoying the rise of Arkansas football. I love what Sam Pittman is doing, and I just want the games to be good. From there, Arkansas would finish the year with a 52-3 loss to Alabama, and while they were selected to play in the Texas Bowl, that game was canceled. Overall, there was a lot of hype and momentum in that 2020 college football season, but was it fool's gold, and how are they going to do after losing their quarterback and one of their premier running backs? Well, it looks like it'd be better. The new starting quarterback was a 4-star recruit by the name of KJ Jefferson. He had played a lot the year prior in the Mizzou game and was proven as a solid backup. He's a guy who was built like Cam Newton, who could both pass and run the ball. When I made my preview this past offseason, I said the Razorbacks would go 6-6, and the season would depend on how KJ Jefferson did. He has elevated them so far. Another thing to add in, another reason why Arkansas has gotten better is because of their defensive coordinator, Barry Odom. To add intrigue to the Mizzou-Arkansas rivalry, Odom was a head coach for 4 years at Mizzou before he was fired. He ended up taking the defensive coordinator spot at Arkansas, and he took a couple of Mizzou players with him. Odom is known as a defensive mastermind, and while he wasn't a great head coach at Missouri, he knows his defense. So far, that Hogs defense has improved so much, and that has been a big reason why they've been so good in 2021. With KJ Jefferson, Treylon Smith, and Treylon Burks all back, they had the pieces to have a breakout year. In week 1, they'd play against Rice, and while they struggled for a little bit to begin the game, they ended up winning 38-17. Week 2 was a huge matchup. Number 15 Texas came to town, and this game renewed an old rivalry. Arkansas ran it down the Longhorns' throat, and in front of nearly 75,000 fans, they blew out the Longhorns 40-21, and Arkansas football was back. They hopped into the rankings at number 20, and then they killed Georgia Southern the following week to make an appearance at number 16 in the polls. Now, they had a huge matchup. To some people, A&M was the best team in the SEC West going into this year, and they were undefeated as they met at a neutral site in AT&T Stadium. This game was fun. Arkansas scored a quick field goal, had a touchdown to Treylon Burks, and then A.J. Green also had a touchdown. They got out to an early 17-point lead, and the defense would hold A&M to only 10 points. Arkansas won 20-10, and they were now 4-0. Sadly, this past weekend, Arkansas got exposed as they got shut out 37-0 by Georgia. This game happened in Athens, and it just seemed like Georgia was the better team from start to finish, and they were just that much more physical. While 37-0 is not a good score or a good loss, I think this is the best Georgia team we've seen in a long time, and I do believe Arkansas is going to rebound from this. Just a few years ago, Arkansas had not won an SEC game in 2 years, were coming off arguably the worst hire in Power 5 history, and they were labeled as an embarrassment and a dead program. Just 2 years later, they are now in the face of College Game Day. They are America's team, and the future is looking extremely bright in Arkansas. It just goes to show you, that us college football analysts and fans have no idea what we're talking about, as most people gave Sam Pittman a terrible grade as a coach, and he is now the frontrunner for Coach of the Year in my eyes. Arkansas football has made the 2021 college football season very special, and I'm so excited to see how they're going to do. They have a lot of tough games left on the schedule, but this team is built different, and I really wonder what their record is going to be. I know I probably could have gone more in depth on the Chad Morris and Brett Bielema eras, but I'm going to be making a Chad Morris documentary here in the next month or two, so I'll elaborate more in that video. I also want to see how Arkansas does, and if they continue to get even better, I'll make another video on this team. But what do you guys think? If you're an Arkansas fan, what do you think of the rebuild, and what do you think of everything that's going on? What do you think your record will be this year? And just overall, what are your thoughts on this season? Be sure to give me another topic as well. Subscribe if you are new to the channel, hit that like button if you enjoyed today's content, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.